Most people remember the noise, the explosion when the referee's hand hit the mat for the third time. They remember the confetti and the sight of Kendal Grey, championship held high, tears streaming down her face. But that's not what I remember. When I think back to that night, the first thing that comes to mind is the silence. It was a specific kind of quiet, the kind you only find backstage in the minutes before a main event. It's not an absence of sound, it's a presence. It's the weight of expectation of a story that everyone thinks they already know the ending to. And that night, the story was written in stone. Kendal was the final stepping stone, the honorable sacrifice for a bigger narrative. You could feel it in the way producers talked, the way the crew moved with a calm sense of finality. No one was frantic. There were no last-minute changes. No buzz of the unexpected. It was just procedure. Kendal was meant to put up a good fight and lose. That was her job. She wasn't seen as a champion. Not by the people in charge. She was just a chapter in someone else's book. The air was thick with that certainty. A calm, professional acceptance of the inevitable. But in that quiet, Kendal sat alone, and she had a different kind of stillness around her. It wasn't acceptance, it was focus. It was a silence of its own, and it was about to swallow the world whole. The walk to the gorilla position is the longest journey in this business. It's a short physical distance, but emotionally, it can feel like miles. I saw Kendal make that walk, and there was none of the manufactured intensity you see in the packages. She wasn't snarling for a camera she knew was there. Her fists weren't clenched. Her eyes were clear, almost serene. It was the look of someone who had made peace with the fight ahead, not with the outcome. Then there was Orton. He stood near the entrance, just out of sight of the live crowd, watching the monitors. He was there to support the reigning champion, his product. For 20 years, Randy Orton had cultivated an aura of unnerving calm, the predator waiting patiently. But this was different. Usually, his stillness was a performance, a character choice. That night, it felt heavy. It felt real. It was the stillness of a man holding something down, something deep inside. You could almost see the pressure of his own legacy surrounding him. He wasn't just watching a match. He was watching a reflection of his own standards, his own demand for perfection. He expected a clean, dominant performance, another testament to his greatness as a mentor. He was watching his story, and he had no idea that Kendal Grey was about to rip the pages out and start writing her own. The juxtaposition of their two silences was everything. One of resolve, the other of immense, unseen pressure. The match started exactly as planned. Every beat, every sequence was hitting its mark. It was a clean, professional, contesta kind of match you can call in your sleep if you've been doing this long enough. The crowd was appreciative, but they were passive. They were watching a performance they had seen 100 times before. A well-rehearsed dance where the underdog gets their moments of hope before the inevitable, crushing defeat. It was smooth. Too smooth. And that's when it happened. It wasn't a botched move, not something the fans would ever notice. It was smaller than that. It was a hesitation, a split-second pause from the champion, a moment where she looked to the corner, to Orton, for a confirmation that wasn't there. It was a flicker of insecurity, a tiny crack in the armor of the unbeatable machine. To the millions watching at home, it was nothing. It was a breath, but backstage, we felt it. It was like a single string snapping on a finely tuned instrument. The perfect harmony of the performance was suddenly almost the rhythm was broken. And in our world, a broken rhythm is an invitation for chaos. Kendal felt it too. You could see her eyes change. The serene focus sharpened into something predatory. She saw the crack, and she knew that was her opening not just to win the match, but to shatter the entire story. The main television camera was focused on the in-ring action, as it should have been, but on the monitor, in Gorilla, We had a dedicated shot of Orton, a hero cam, we called it. We were waiting for that stoic, approving nod when his champion took control. We never got it. After that tiny hesitation in the ring, the first visible sign of trouble, Orton's entire demeanor shifted. It was subtle, but it was everything. The muscles in his jaw tightened into knots. His gaze, once calm and observant, became a piercing glare. He wasn't looking at the match anymore. He was looking through it. He saw the mistake, the flaw in the execution, and it was like a personal insult. This wasn't the Viper reacting to a story beat. This was Randy Orton, the perfectionist, the 20-year veteran, watching his meticulously crafted plan begin to fray. His anger wasn't the performative kind. There was no shouting, no dramatic gestures. It was a cold, quiet fury that seemed to suck the warmth out of the air around him. You could feel the temperature drop. The legend, the icon, was losing control of his narrative, and the frustration was simmering just beneath the surface. He was a man who had mastered every variable of this business for 2 decades, and in that moment, he was being reminded that the one thing you can never truly control is the human element. The mask was beginning to slip. Now we come to Drew. Drew McIntyre's involvement was meant to be the final nail in the coffin. The plan was simple. A run-in, a distraction, a claymore kick to Kendal, while the referee was down, and an easy victory for the champion. It was a classic, formulaic ending, designed to protect everyone and send the fans home with the expected result. The cue was given, the referee turned his back, right on schedule. The producer in my ear said, "Go, go." But Drew didn't move. He stood there, right behind the curtain, his music primed, and he just watched for 3 full seconds, which on live television feels like an hour. He did nothing. Backstage, it was silent confusion. We were all looking at each other, then at the monitors, then back at each other. Did he miss his cue? Was his music not playing? But I was looking at his face. He wasn't confused. He was captivated. He saw what we saw. The champion was faltering, and Kendal was surging on a wave of pure, unscripted momentum. Drew, a man who has lived and breathed the energy of a live crowd his entire life, understood what was happening. The building was starting to believe. Intervening at that moment wouldn't have just been following the script. It would have been poisoning the well. It would have been killing something real that was being born right in front of him. In that moment of hesitation, he made a choice. He chose the story over the script. Those 3 seconds changed everything. Drew's hesitation wasn't just a pause. It was a power vacuum. The script died in that moment, and in its place, reality rushed in. Kendal, running on pure instinct, didn't wait for a distraction that was never coming. She saw the champion looking toward the entrance, expecting help, and she exploited it. It was a flurry, desperate, raw, and utterly believable. The crowd felt it instantly. The low hum of polite appreciation turned into a roar. They knew, intuitively, that what they were watching was no longer a performance. The planned finish was gone, and these 2 athletes were now fighting for their lives, completely off script. They were in uncharted territory, and as the arena came unglued, Orton's anger finally boiled over. He slammed his hand on the announce table, a sharp, cracking sound that the broadcast microphones barely picked up. It wasn't a prop. It was the sound of pure, unfiltered rage. His protege was being exposed. His plan was in shambles, and the carefully constructed edifice of his legacy was cracking right in front of the world. The hesitation from Drew had lit the fuse. The crowd's roar was the explosion. And Randy Orton was at ground zero, the architect watching his masterpiece burn down around him, and all he could do was watch. The end came out of nowhere. It wasn't a long, drawn-out finishing sequence. It was abrupt. It was violent. Kendal hoisted the champion onto her shoulders, a last gasp effort born of adrenaline, and delivered her finisher. The impact echoed through the arena. She fell into the cover. 1. The crowd was screaming, rising to its feet as a single entity. 2. A wave of sound and motion. Thousands of people leaning in. Their collective breath held in their chests. It was that moment, that tiny space between the numbers 2 and 3 where magic happens. It's a pocket of absolute silence, where 10,000 people are all thinking the exact same thing. Is this it? The referee's hand was in the air, poised. For an eternity that lasted less than a second, the world stood still. Then it came down. 3. The sound that followed wasn't a cheer. It was a detonation. It was a physical force, a shockwave of human emotion that hit you in the chest and took your breath away. It was the sound of disbelief turning into euphoria. It was raw, it was cathartic, and it was one of the most honest moments I have ever witnessed in a wrestling ring. Kendal Grey, the woman who was supposed to be a footnote, had just become the headline, and in that beautiful, perfect chaos, the story everyone thought they knew was over. A new one had just begun. While the camera zoomed in on Kendall's face, a portrait of shock and joy, my eyes were glued to the monitor showing Orton. The celebration was for her, but the story that would be told for years to come was him. As soon as the 3 count hit, he didn't move. He just stared. His face was a blank canvas of ice. The director was screaming in my headset to get a camera on him, but we held back. This felt too real, too private. After a few seconds, he slowly, deliberately slid under the bottom rope and into the ring. He didn't run, he didn't stomp, he moved with a chilling predatori grace. He completely ignored Kendall in the championship. Lying on the mat, he walked straight to his defeated protege and helped her to her feet, his back to the hard camera. Then, he turned his head just slightly, and his eyes found Drew, who was just emerging from the back to join the celebration. The look he gave him, it was void of all performance. There was no character. It was pure, undiluted fury. It was a look that said, "You did this." Backstage, everyone stopped. The usual post-match chatter died instantly. We all knew we had just witnessed more than an upset. We had witnessed a line being crossed live in front of the world. The show was over, but the real drama was just beginning. Coming back through the curtain after a match like that should be a moment of pure triumph. It should be a flood of hugs, high fives, and producers telling you how great it was. But that night, it was like walking into a library. The moment Kendall emerged, there was a polite, almost hesitant round of applause. People were happy for her, but they were terrified of the fallout. The air was thick with it. Then Orton came through, his face like thunder. He didn't speak. He walked past everyone, his eyes locked forward, and went straight to Drew. The confrontation wasn't what you might expect. There was no shouting match, no shoving. It was worse. It was quiet. He got right in Drew's face, speaking in a low, menacing voice that was for him and him alone. We couldn't hear the words, but we didn't need to. We could see the vein pulsing in Orton's temple. We could see Drew, a giant of a man, standing his ground, but not escalating. He was listening, taking it. In that moment, the legend was gone. The larger-than-life character we'd known for 2 decades vanished, and in his place was a man whose pride had been wounded, whose control had been stolen from him. We were watching the marble statue crack, seeing the fragile human being beneath the carefully sculpted surface of a killer. It was uncomfortable. It was raw, and no one dared to intervene. Years from now, when people look at the history books, they'll see that this was the night Kendal Grey became the Evolve Women's Champion. They'll watch the clip of the pinfall, of her emotional celebration, and they'll see it as her moment. And they're not wrong. But for those of us who were there, who saw what happened behind the curtain, that victory is only half the story. The truth is, the most unforgettable moments in this business are rarely the ones that make the highlight reels. They are the small, unscripted flashes of truth that slip through the cracks of the performance. They are the moments when the pressure becomes too much, when the lines blur, and the person behind the character is laid bare for all to see. That night wasn't just about a champion being crowned. It was about the weight of a 20-year legacy, and the anger that boils when it's threatened. It was a stark, powerful reminder that no matter how perfect the performance, no matter how iconic the legend, underneath it all is a person, and sometimes the mask cracks.